All right, thank you guys. Yes, I can see you also. Okay, so I don't know what is up with this class, but you guys are not handing in your test. So
A bunch of people dropped.
what do you mean drop?
I'm just guessing.
No,
Some people,
no, they're here. Yes.
Would you like me to redo the audio question that I did?
Let me talk to me after class. Okay, so Abid is not here. Andrew, you got your first test. Second one? You have until April 3, right? Did you guys see my announcement? Right, until April 3 for all the back tests. Why? Because we are now really entering difficult material. You guys have to be on board. What we're about to do after Nietzsche, Marcel, Levinas, Simon Weil, especially Marcel and Levinas, these are really hardcore, difficult texts, and I need you to be really together. So, April 3, everything in. Let's see. Brown is not here. Brownie, your second test?
I did it.
Not that I know of. You want to resubmit?
Sure. Which the second test was
Rumi and Maimonides. In the late papers, so I can find it.
in the what?
In the late papers folder, so I can find it. Okay, good. So King Kapi,
Yes.
your second test
Yes, it will be there
before April 3. Okay, good. Khan is not here. Rubina, what's going on with you?
And then
The two tests, right? And then Smith is not here. Okay. All right. So also now the penalty is going to be greater for late tests. I switched it. I said initially in the whatever the announcement, I wouldn't like you would lose the test points. It's a little unrealistic. So you're gonna lose 2 points, right? Instead of 1 point, you're gonna lose 2 points, and then you'll have 1 week to finish the test, right? So that's the new rule. So 2 points if it's late, and then you have 1 week to finish it. Beyond the week, it's over, right? Doesn't count. You lose 15 points. Okay, any questions or problems with that? Okay, I wish you would come in the second row.
no.
Not you. It's just, yeah. And you know what? Yeah, let's do that. Let me do that. You guys in the third row, can you come in the fourth row? I want to have like cohesion. So there's a couple spaces here. Yes, all of you. You can do that, or you cannot all do that. Some of you will have to move. Move in the front row. There's 2 seats there. There's 1 seat there. Pick up a chair, put it there. Make it two rows, please. Rows, not 3. I'm serious about this. We're gonna do this. 2 rows, guys, bigger. And Alam. That's cool. That's cool. You're doing good. Alam, however, I don't know how you're gonna do it. Just come a little forward so it looks better. Thank you. Thank you. Can we do this from now on? 2 rows. Okay, there's not enough people for 3 rows. 2 rows. Okay, good. All right, let's finish Nietzsche today. I'm going to review a little bit what supposedly you guys listened to last time, and then we'll go into today's lecture, right? So like I mentioned, just because we haven't been together for a while, let me just bring everything together right now. So Nietzsche really is... yeah, can you be the doorman also while you're at it? Thank you. Okay, Nietzsche is really, we're at a turning point, right? Nietzsche, up until now, all of the authors kind of, had the same presupposition that God exists. They wrestled with God, they grappled with God, but they didn't doubt that God existed. None of the authors that we've studied so far really doubted that God existed. Now we're entering modernity, and we have one of the most powerful voices about claiming, right, the death of God. right? This is really the atmosphere of modernity. The old relics of religion and these old beliefs are being shed collectively by the West, right? And Nietzsche is really a powerful voice of secularism, of atheism. And before, so I know some of you believe, right, believe in God and so forth, and that's good. But, and you would tend to brush off Nietzsche, like, you know, I don't need to pay attention to this guy. Actually, Nietzsche is really the rite of passage for any mature believer, right? So if you're an atheist, you're already going to love Nietzsche. There's no problem for you. But if you're a believer, if you believe in something, Nietzsche is actually a very important rite of passage. You cannot get to mature spirituality without first grappling with the critiques that Nietzsche is giving religion, right? Because they are very, very honest and to the point critiques. So before one can get to any stage, any mature state, religiously, spiritually, you actually have to sit down and grapple with what Nietzsche is saying. If you do not do that, you will remain on an infantile, very immature level of spirituality, the kind that Maimonides, right, says you're right there with the pagans, right? So this is why he's so important to do him, right? To really study him seriously, to take him seriously. Myself, when I first started to study, I found him very difficult. I mean, I could understand what he was saying, but I found very difficult to respond to Nietzsche from a faith-based perspective. It was almost impossible. It took me actually 10 years to really start to see my way through. And some of the texts we're going to do later, like Marcel and Levinas, I chose them because they actually bring a response to Nietzsche, very elaborate, sophisticated ones. So here we're just going to lay out the problem, the questions, and I will begin to answer those as we get into the harder texts, right, that are coming after Nietzsche. So, two main criticisms, make sure you have those down. Two main criticisms by Nietzsche. And he's targeting Christianity, but it really works for any religion, right? Most religions fall into these traps, right, that he's talking about. So, first critique, right? This is targeting specifically Christianity, but you can find elements of this in Islam, a little bit in Judaism. You have this also in Eastern religions, right? This is the hatred of life that he finds Christianity is kind of expressing, teaching. And this hatred of life it's subtle. Christians don't go around saying, I hate life, right? But it's a subtle way that there is a hatred of life through the hatred of the passions. Right? Christianity, for Nietzsche, has waged a war against the human passions. And in doing so, says Nietzsche, it has actually waged a war on life. Okay? Let me say that again. Christianity, for Nietzsche, has waged a war on human passions, and we're going to see briefly what those are. And in doing so, has waged war against life itself. So what are the passions? I'll define it like this. A passion is anything that, how shall I put it? Passion is really anything, how do I explain it? A passion is kind of like a call from life. Life is calling you towards itself.
Your urges.
It's what?
Your urges. U-R-G-E-S. Your urge.
The urge, yes, any urge, right? Urge or passion, right? So any passion you have, whether it's appetite, right? Appetite for food, appetite for comfort, appetite for companionship, appetite for sex. This is the world calling you to move towards it, right? You are drawn towards a person. You're drawn towards a restaurant. You're drawn towards that burger over there, right? So that's the first passion, right? Other passion, anger. Anger also, life is triggering you, drawing out of you action, drawing out of you a reaction, right? Again, this is life calling out to you. All of the passions, right? There's 7 total in Christianity, which they associate with 7 sins, right? But in general, right, and you have to watch the video to get the details, right? But in general, a passion is life calling you out of yourself towards itself, towards life, right? So any passions we have is really life drawing us out of yourselves, out of ourselves towards life, right? A passion is that which draws you outside of yourself towards something in reality, something in life, right? And so Nietzsche is saying, why this hatred of passion, right? Deep down, what it really is hiding is a hatred for life, right? Since we are supposed to renounce life, and therefore we have to continuously put down our passions, right? So that's the first critique he's giving, is that Christianity is anti-life. Anything that we desire in life, we shouldn't, right? You wanna conquer life. You wanna be ambitious. You wanna, you're lusting after someone. You're hungering after power, after money, after food. Any of these, right? You should actually not have these passions for Christianity. You should be completely not attracted by life, right? And these passions is really, we are attracted to life through these passions, right? So that's the first thing. So, and more, of course, you should listen to the whole video last time to get the whole lecture on that. The second criticism, which Nietzsche is going to give, is what we're going to do today. And this, in my view, is the hardest, right? I was able to quickly resolve last time the war on life. And if you listen to the video, you'll see how I resolve it, right? But it's easy to go back to the original scriptures of Christianity and see that this is not the case, right? So that was easy to get rid of. I don't have a problem with disputing Nietzsche on this hatred of life. It's not really the case when it comes to the original text of Christianity. So that was easy to kind of set aside. But today's critique for me was the hardest, because it was the most plausible. It felt really like something we would do. And this is the critique that, against Christianity again, that Christianity has invented everything that it teaches. Why? Because human beings are so miserable that they somehow need to have this alternative universe set up for them so that they can survive the dreadfulness of this life, right? So he's saying Christianity has created a parallel world, a paradise, with God and angels, and has created this whole myth of salvation, the whole myth of resurrection, whole myth of redemption, like we're going to go to heaven and everything's going to be okay. It's like nothing, complete story, right? This is a complete myth, he said. And so the way he argues why it's a myth, I think is really, really hard to circumvent. So before we get into the way he argues for it, or what he says about this issue that we have just created this parallel universe because we are so miserable, I want to bring up two other authors who have said something very similar. So I'm building the case that Nietzsche is doing, and I'm going to bring in Marx and Freud, both of whom have also elaborated the same theory about religion. So let's start with Marx. Marx, you recall, right? He was
German philosopher.
Thank you. Yeah, German philosopher, wrote, the
Communist Manifesto, Das Kapital.
Great. Yeah, this is good. I'm forgetting everything about Marx right now.
Yeah.
Okay, as he said, right? So, but the main thing he did, which was really interesting, was his criticism of religion. So let's go back to Marx, what he was trying to do. Marx, remember, is trying to start a revolution. He's trying to get the working class, which is oppressed, which is, getting tiny wages. Everybody is oppressing them. They're not making enough money. They're really poor. And he's trying to get them worked up and to create a revolution so they can become, more wealthy and so forth. But the problem with this working class is that they're religious. And so what is wrong with that? What's the problem when you're dealing with religious folk and you're trying to start a revolution? What's going to happen? Yeah.
They're too happy to care about rising up than
exactly.
overthrowing.
Right. This working class who is very believing, very faithful, they're already thinking, well, it's okay. I'm going to have the afterlife. It's not a big deal that I'm suffering now. In fact, my suffering is a way to glorify God. And so what matters is the afterlife. That's what they have been taught. What matters is the afterlife. This life doesn't matter. I have to just accept it, carry my cross, move forward. And so he's like, I can't work with you guys. You guys are like high. You're high on religion. He basically says that, right? He tells them, he insults them. He says, you guys are high all day long on this myth. And so I cannot work with you. You're not able to feel the pain because you're in a perpetual high. And he says this very famous quote, right? That religion is the opium of the masses. Make sure you write this down. Yeah. Religion is the opium, O-P-I-U-M. Opium, the equivalent today is heroin, right? Or what?
An addictive drug.
Exactly. It's like an addictive drug, which, I mean, if ever any of you have tried morphine or heroin, God forbid.
There is an opiate crisis in America and some parts
exactly.
of
but it feels amazing, right? Yes. Huh? Yes. Religion is the opium of the masses. O-P-I-U-M. So opium is today the equivalent is heroin, right? And if any of you have ever tried that, or morphine, if you're in the hospital, you feel amazing. Like you could be like, you know, your both legs could be cut off and you're floating like an angel, right? So, and he's saying religion is exactly like it's doing that to you. You're on this perpetual high, you don't feel pain. And so I cannot work with you if you don't feel pain, if you're not, you know, angry, resentful, unhappy. How can I get you to do this revolution and you know, crush the
bourgeoisie?
Yeah. Try to think of another word.
The upper class.
The upper class, right? So that's his first. So and actually, you know, to be honest, that there's something there that is true. This is why it's so hard to. I mean, we have all met people like that who have miserable lives, but they're perpetually praising God. And it's like you're never going to change your life if you're always so damn happy in your situation, right? So there is an issue of how religion can get you in this kind of, according to Nietzsche, fake high. That it's all going to be okay, right? It's going to be a happy end. Right? And you're here floating and you're not doing anything about your situation, right? Because you feel like everything is going to be okay somehow. Okay, that's Marx. Now Freud says something even more powerful, which is even more difficult to circumvent. So Freud, just a few words on Freud. He's the father of psychoanalysis, right? Any psychology we're doing, he started it, right? He wrote, by the way, an amazing book on the interpretation of dreams. So if any of you have amazing dreams, vivid dreams, you would want to read that book because it's really actually helpful. It gives actually really good technique to interpret dreams. In fact, I've been using that technique for years and it works. So if any of you ever has a dream you want me to interpret, I will show you how to do it. I will interpret your dream in front of you and then I will show you the technique. So if anyone is interested, maybe even after class, we can do a little bonus workshop on interpretation of dreams because such a good skill to have, right? So that's Freud. Now, Freud said something really, he noticed something about dreams, the dream state. He noticed that when we dream, it's not always the case, but that was his theory, that we often dream about things we can't have in real life. So for example, you have a crush on someone, they're dating someone else, but in your dreams, it's gonna be another story, right? You might end up in a really nice situation with that person, right? So he noticed how as human beings, we create these alternative universes during our sleep, where everything that we can't do in life, we do in our dreams, right? So for example, if you're mad at someone, I've had this, right? If you're mad at someone, do you ever dream you're chopping up their head, you know, or shooting them? You might have violent dreams like that you can't be mad at them in real life, but then in the dream, you're like chopping them up. Yeah. You would like to though.
You gotta watch out though, you might get canceled for saying you let dream like that.
Oh, I'm already canceled so many times. It's done already.
It kind of just happens, like whenever I see happening right in front of me, like I'll just imagine like a cartoon.
Oh, you'll just do it right away.
Yeah.
Okay. Some of us, we're not allowing ourselves to think that, but in our dreams, it will come up very vividly. So if you want to have murderous dreams, don't allow yourself to think that. You gotta think, you gotta be like, I can't think that, that's wrong, I shouldn't think that. And as you're repressing it, you have to repress it. Then in your dreams, you're gonna be like so violent. Right? So
that's true.
So he's saying, so it's very interesting. So he's basically saying whatever we can't have in reality, we will project in our dreams, right? Whatever we can't have, whatever is causing us suffering, we will somehow make another story up in our dreams to survive. And so he says when we have religion, we proceed in the same way, but collectively. In other words, collectively, we are so miserable on this earth and we are so repressed. We can't admit how miserable we are. If we did, we would just all commit mass suicide, right? I mean, if we really faced how miserable we are, I mean, we couldn't do it. So we collectively project the idea that there is a Father God who loves us, who created us, and who is taking care of us and who will save us. But this is a projection because we are so insecure. I'll give you an example of how we do this all day long. This for me is so hard to respond to. Okay, so you have a crush on someone, right? And you know they don't know you exist, right?
Oh.
But then one day out of the blue they text you. Now what do you start to think? What's your mind, your fertile imagination doing?
Perhaps they like you back.
Is what?
Perhaps they like you back.
Right, you start to project, you have this big movie starting, right? that, oh, maybe they like me, and actually the other day, right, they like me and they looked at me, and now you're imagining that they like you. You're projecting that they like you because you want it so bad. This is a natural tendency, right? Let me say that again so you can write it down. One of the most natural tendencies of human beings is to project what they cannot have, is to create a kind of, is to imagine, is to, yeah, project what they cannot have. So for example, like I said, you have that crush on that person, they text you out of the blue. Now you're creating a whole story, right? So we make up stories. This is something we do all the time as human beings. We make up stories of what we cannot have. We start to project it. And so Freud says religion is a collective projection. We are so collectively miserable that we project that there is a heavenly Father who loves us, who created us, who cares for us, who will redeem us, and so forth. But because we want it so bad, he says, we necessarily project it, right? It's anything we want really bad and don't have, we're gonna project, right? So this one is really hard to get around, right? This time, because we do it so naturally. So yeah, why not? Why aren't we collectively doing that, right? Projecting this because we are so damn miserable on the earth. We are naturally then going to project that it's okay so that we can survive. But says Nietzsche, there's not a single evidence that this whole big story we tell ourselves has any truth content. That's the issue, yes.
Could it also be that we create this reality because of fear?
Exactly. We're fearful, we're miserable, we're lost. And so we create this, and now we feel better already, right? So I mean, this is the mental illness is like that, right? When it gets, we do this all a little bit, but the extreme mental illness, that person is living in an imaginary world. Have you ever met people in the street who are crazy? They're in their world. They're happy. Did you notice how happier they are from you? They're sitting there laughing at their own jokes, right? They have created, because life has become so miserable for them, they have created in their psyche a totally different reality. They're talking to people who they're having conversations, they're laughing. And this is what we do, every one of us, to a little smaller degree. But this is extreme mental illness, because you're so miserable, extremely miserable, you'll snap and you'll be in an alternative reality. And so he's saying religion is humanity collectively snapping and creating this story just so we can survive. You see how difficult this one is? Because something so natural that we do. I wouldn't put it past us to have done that, right? Okay, so that's the issue. So let's read some of what Nietzsche has to say, and then maybe we can try to answer, try to see ways around it, but for sure we'll deal with it. Yes, go ahead.
You said that reminds me of something. Years ago, I had like this understanding that religion, in a way, is, as an example, let's say, policing exists, right? People are scared to do something because they're afraid of the consequences. If you rob a store, you might get killed or you might go to jail, right? Same thing with religion. In a way, it creates law and order for people. So like people say, oh, if I do this, or if I think that, or if I act this way, God's going to punish me.
Okay, very good. Yes, that's another way that we use these narratives, right? One way is to get rid of our fear. Another way is to control people, right? So that's another reason why we would have created collectively these big stories, so we can better control people and get them to, don't steal, don't do this. Because, and actually Nietzsche says this in other passages, that the people who came up with these commandments, and he's going to bash the Jews a little bit. He bashes the Jews a little bit. He says, well, these people were so miserable and weak, right, that they had to create these rules so that the strong would not completely annihilate them. So they created the rules like don't steal, don't kill, don't cheat, so that the strong of the world, who could destroy them in
in an instant.
Thank you, in an instant, right, wouldn't do it. They would be scared to become so violent, and then they would be protected, right? Our doorman has locked himself out. Doorman, the purpose was for you to...
I'm sorry.
How did you lock yourself out? Okay. Okay, so very good, right, Rubino. That's also another use of these stories, right? Okay. All right, let's go to the text, which is on page. Yes. Okay, go to 137. We're going to focus on that one, 137. So now I've summarized it, so you should be able to follow. In Christianity, neither morality. Everyone with me? Yes.
I have a question.
Yes.
There's other numbers.
You're messed up. You're 15. Do you have 15? Can you find 15? I don't know if because we're in the Antichrist. We're not anymore in the Twilight of the Idols, because I don't think you have the Antichrist in that edition.
Oh, it says Antichrist.
Oh, you do? Okay, great. So go to the Antichrist, which is towards the end, right? There's 2 books here, right? So go to the Antichrist and then number 15. That should work. You got it? Okay, good.
Yeah.
All right. In Christianity, he says, neither morality nor religion come into contact with reality at any point. That's how he begins. He says, when it comes to Christianity, it doesn't come into contact with reality at any point, meaning there's nothing real about it. It's all a big story we have told ourselves and created to get so that we can survive the fear, so that we can control people. This is just stories. And he continues, nothing but, and then we're going to look at this, imaginary causes, imaginary effects, imaginary beings, imaginary psychology, and imaginary teleology. You see those, right? So let's go for each one. Let's try each one and see what it is. So first of all, how does Christianity create imaginary causes? What are some causes that Christianity tells us exist, but it's all a big story?
So one common thing is, demonic possession. Maybe some people do bad things. They could be possessed.
Okay, good. All right, good, right? You have somebody who's, acting weird and they're like, that's Satan. Right? Imaginary cause, says Nietzsche. Where is this Satan you're talking about? Let me meet him, right? You invented this story of this demonic possession so that you can create this world, so that you can scare people, but it's all a big story. Another cause, very important cause, the first cause. Yes.
The afterlife.
That's not a cause, but we'll get to that one. It's there. Weisselberg?
I was gonna say, like going to hell.
That's not a cause either.
Things exist. We exist.
Okay, the cause of the universe. It's scary not to know where we come from, right? I mean, we have no. What are we doing here, right? Who put a why, right? So we create a cause. There is a creator. Everything is beautiful because he made it so, and he created us, and he fashioned us, breathed his life into us, all will be well. Right? We don't have any proof of this, says Nietzsche. Who says there's a creator? Maybe it's just, random, right? This is before evolution, right? So maybe it's just all a big accident, a mistake, right? Why we have, who says that there is a cause, but it makes us feel better that there's a cause. That's why there's a cause, yes.
It's like saying, if something bad happens to you, someone just says like, oh, it's probably God's just punishing you. Is that?
Yeah, same thing. Yes, that's a good cause, right? God is punishing you. It's like, no, he isn't. There is no God. No one is punishing you. But people want you to believe God is punishing you. Why? So they can control you, right? The priestly caste is controlling you with these stories. So they want you to be scared, or the weak, right? The weak Jewish nation trying to control you with these stories so you don't destroy them, right? So he has all kinds of theories who came up with these stories, but in general, it is to control you. Yes?
In the old time, when the church controlled everything, they would have everyone would commit crazy crimes. They would kill, they would murder, rape, shoot, whatever it was, and then they would go to the priest and they would say, Father, forgive me for I've sinned. And then they said, okay, say like 5-6 Hail Marys, donate like 5,000, and you can forget about that.
It was good business. Sin was good business for the church. Gave a lot of money. Right. Oh, you sinned here. Right. So yes, and they would sell salvation, right? This was another way to control, right? So very good. Okay, so we got the causes. Let's look at the next one. Imaginary effects. So this is now something happened. It's a result. It's something that happened. An effect. What are some imaginary effects?
So that would be like going to hell. Right?
Let me think.
Like because I did this, the effect I will now.
Oh, okay. Yes. Sure, that would work. Yes. Okay. So you sin, and now the result, the consequence, right? Hell. And Nietzsche is like, what hell? Who says? I don't see any hell. Do you? Right? How do you prove this? This is again a big story to control you, right? And to get money from you. Very good. Another imaginary effect. I see some examples here. Redemption, punishment. Okay, punishment, yes, that's the hell, right? What about forgiveness of sin? How is that an imaginary effect? Something that happens to you.
So when people feel forgiven.
Okay, yeah. You feel, right? Some people, they will come to you and be like, oh, the Lord has set me free. And Nietzsche is like, no, he hasn't. You just feel better today, right? Why has the Lord set you free, right? You're just feeling better. You ate well. You had a better night's sleep, right? Maybe you're taking more vitamin B12. Now you're feeling better, right? So he's saying all of this, right? That, somehow God changed us, or grace, right? Really transformed. It's like, you say it's God, but maybe it's just you, after a long process, had a breakthrough. Maybe it's just your brain, right? Maybe you just shifted. Yes, right.
So what did you say? This is called like the idea of hell. Nietzsche says it's called like what?
An imaginary effect, right? Consequence, imaginary consequence. Okay, good. How about imaginary, this one's trickier, imaginary natural science. So now he's saying we have a way of talking about science, which is also a pure myth.
Mm-hmm. Maybe like, natural disasters like floods and storms. Maybe he's saying people ascribe that to God sending a flood or a storm.
Okay. Yes, you could say that. I mean, we had that. People saying that when Hurricane Katrina, which you were not born yet.
I was 10 years old.
You maybe, but maybe some of those guys know.
Yeah, a lot of people
there was a huge hurricane went against New Orleans, the most sinful city of our country, right?
Yeah.
And so people were saying, see, it's the sin over there that attracted that hurricane, right? So yes, maybe here we have imaginary natural science. Excellent. Another way that we do science in an imaginary way. You give some examples if you want to look at them.
Okay.
Maybe we'll help you. What does he mean by anthropocentrism? Yeah.
That everything is centered around humanity.
Exactly.
Humanity is special.
Yes, we are special. We are the most sophisticated. Everything revolves around. It's like, this is a myth. Who says you're special? You're not special. Look at you. You can't even, you can't step outside without freezing to death. You can't fly. You can't swim. What can you do? Nothing. Right? So he's saying we have put ourselves at the height and the paroxysm of creation because this is a story we tell ourselves. Maybe we're nothing special. Maybe we're just like the other species. Why are we putting ourselves superior? It's a whole story we tell ourselves about why we're superior. In fact, I really believe Nietzsche here because we are so insecure. If you look at philosophy, from medieval times until now, they're trying to make an argument why we are different from animals. And over again, you have philosophers working on how we are different and superior to animals. And they do this every single century. Why are we so keen on separating ourselves from animals? Maybe we're a little bit insecure and we have to convince ourselves that we are different. That's why we put so much energy into it. But Nietzsche is like, this is a story you tell yourself. We are nothing special, actually, right? Good. Let's go to the next one, imaginary psychology. Well, this one's a big one for Christianity, imaginary psychology. Or any religion for that matter. There's a whole imaginary psychology going on. What kind of inner life, inner experiences would a religious person talk to you about? And you could be like, you're dreaming, you're inventing. This is imaginary.
Demonic possession.
Okay, we have the demonic possession. What else? Yes.
God
Yes, like God healed me, God, changed me, God. And you're like, God didn't do any of that. You did. Imaginary psychology, right? What else? This is really hardcore. It's hard
Some
to.
people.
Would that be like feeling like guilty about doing
Yes.
the smallest
Yes, you feel guilty, and Nietzsche's like, why? You just living your life, right? It's okay to live life, make mistakes. Why are you feeling so guilty? Life is chaotic. You're doing your best. Stop feeling guilty. This is your story you tell yourself. Again. That it's wrong, that God is judging you. Get rid of the story, relax.
So some people attribute their talent to God, the talents.
Yes, or you say, God has blessed me. It's like, no, nobody blessed you. You're just lucky. Right? So are you seeing how, and everything, right, that we have, that a lot of things that, are part of normal belief system in Christianity, Nietzsche is like, you don't have any proof for this. This is all imaginary, right? Last one. This one is the best one. Imaginary teleology. Teleology is from the Greek telos, which means the end. So the end of times, imaginary end of times. What do we have in terms of in Christianity about, what kind of discourse do we have about the end of times?
There's a book of Revelations, what's going to happen at the end of the world.
Yes, right. The kingdom of God, the return of Jesus, right? Judgment day, resurrection. It's like, this is all in your head, right? This is not true. How do you know, right? So Nietzsche is really, I mean, he's right. We don't know. These are stories. So how can we respond to this, right? This is the question, right? But before we get to the response, let's finish the text. So he continues, last 2 lines, actually before. Yeah. Who alone has reason? Are you with me? Raise your hand if you're there, last 2 lines. Okay. So now he's going to ask why we do this, right? So he says, who alone has reason to lie himself out of actuality? Why do we lie like this? Why do we create these alternative worlds? And he says, he who suffers from it. It is because we suffer, because we are wretched, because we are weak, and we can't face reality that we have to create these alternative stories. But remember, Nietzsche, his advice to us, right? I think, and he's not saying it here, but in general, in other texts, he's saying, instead of, being so cowardly and being so afraid of life, why don't we courageously enter life and live it fully, right? That's what he's trying to say. Let's stop trying to evade life or create alternative universes. Let's step into life. This is kind of what Job had to learn, right? Let's enter life, face it in all of its beauty and wildness and craziness and pain and darkness and light, right? Let's have the courage to really live life and face life and not always hide behind these stories, right? That's his problem. He's saying, why are we hiding behind these stories? Why can't we just live life as it is, raw, uncut, unfiltered? Do you follow? Right? So that's what he's saying. So he continues, but to suffer from actuality means to be an aborted actuality. So he's saying those people who can't face reality, they are kind of like aborted realities themselves. They're not finished. They're not fully alive. They're not fully human. They're like aborted fetuses, right? And he's saying these people can't face life. But if you're strong, if you're courageous, then you can actually face life and enter it and not have to create these stories to feel better. So that's the idea. Okay, so yes, go ahead, Brian.
So it's basically what he's saying, that if you really want this reality, you basically can't focus.
Not religious in that sense. Yeah. If religion is stories, right? You have to abandon the stories and really face life. And for him, yes, you're right. To face life, we have to abandon the stories.
So but what religion doesn't include these stories?
That's a super good question. So when we do Levinas, especially, and Marcel, which is why we're doing them, we're going to see a different type of spirituality. Not a spirituality hiding behind stories, but a spirituality that enters reality, right? This is what we're going to see. So Levinas and Marcel, that we're about to study, they're thinking about Nietzsche. They have read Nietzsche, they have grappled with Nietzsche, and now they're both believers. One is Jewish, the other is Christian. And they realize Nietzsche is right. We have been hiding behind these stories for too long. Now, how can we reframe what it means to be a Christian, what it means to be a Jew without these stories? Can we still be spiritual without these stories? And they argue that yes, but you have to completely reframe what it means to be a believer, right? It's not a believer in stories, right? So does that answer your question, Roy? At least temporarily?
Yeah.
Right, so yes, to a certain degree, seems you can't be religious and face life, right? But Levinas and Marcel are going to really try to work out a way to still be religious without all these stories, right? And they really believe that actually entering reality is the only way to be truly spiritual. So they're going to go in that direction, in the Nietzschean direction. They're going to say, yes, Nietzsche is right. We need to enter, face reality, and this is what will make us genuinely spiritual. So they kind of flip it on Nietzsche, right? And we'll see that when we study. Okay, so now we have a little time for discussion. So I want to see if any of you can find a way out of this situation, right? Basically, Nietzsche is saying it's all imaginary. You're doing this because you're scared. If you come from a religious background, or even if you don't and you want to play devil's advocate, do you have any way right now that you could respond to Nietzsche in a way that would convince him that what he's saying, he's missing the point, he's not getting it, he's missing something, right? What do you think he's missing? Okay, I get several hands. Let's start with Mujina.
Everything he's saying is denying to himself. Maybe he's just insecure.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're saying it's too good to be true, like he doesn't want to believe something that
Maybe he had that experiences.
with
Just life in general. Maybe
no, but he's like, we don't need those stories, let's live, right? He's in that sense he's pretty secure, but what I'm hearing you asking is, well, how do you know those stories are not true, right? So we don't know for sure if they are, but neither do we know for sure if they are not, right? This is interesting. So you can write this down. This is a good point by Rubinov, right?
Yeah.
It's true we can't be sure those stories are true. I agree. But how can we be sure that there's nothing there, right? I mean, this is collectively we have come up with this. There must be a reason. There must be something, right? How can we be sure that they are not true? And you can't prove either one. He cannot prove those stories are not true either, right? You can't prove they're true, but you cannot prove that they are not true. And so we're kind of suspended, and Nietzsche is kind of making an arbitrary decision. Yeah, they're false, but he doesn't have enough evidence to prove that those stories are false. Do you follow? Right? He would have to die and see if there's anything, come back.
There was also a philosopher from that name. Years ago when I studied this, his hypothesis about life was that when you walk into a classroom, he's saying nothing is there. He's saying you just presume and assume that it's there because you know it's a classroom. So how do you know that the chalkboard is there? Because it's in your head, that's where it's located.
Good, absolutely. So yeah, so we expect certain things to be there, and then they exist, right? So yes, so I like that first point. Make sure you write it down. We can't prove it's true, but neither can we prove that it's false, right? So and Nietzsche is making kind of an arbitrary decision to disbelieve when he doesn't have evidence for that either. Good.
Well, I was gonna say, I feel like my perspective on Nietzsche kind of like changed through the second week. He pretty much called Kant an idiot, which I found very interesting. Because like these philosophers, they're also promoting like Kant was promoting like the idea of like the value in the other, and like to me now, it's kind of like seeing like Nietzsche doesn't care about the other. It's very like a self-centered like philosophy in a way. So not even like from a religious perspective, like think of it like I try to tell Nietzsche like think of it as like just a human perspective. Like don't like just be immoral. Like just don't view like as a world as like just as a taking experience.
So careful, right? He does disagree with Kant because Kant has created this parallel world of the noumenal, right, that we study. So Kant is saying there is all of how we should live, and this is as important as how we do live. So he's saying, for Kant, there's a whole universe of this is how we should live, which is imaginary because we don't have this, right? We should not kill, we should not cheat, we should not steal. And this is completely imaginary. Nothing in this life has taught us, right, that killing is wrong and cheating is wrong. This is a kind of alternative universe. So he's bashing that, but I don't think he's bashing other people because other people are in this life. So for him, we would have to interact with other people. And for Nietzsche, friendship actually is very important, right? So he is, what he doesn't like is this fake universe of the ought, right? Unless you have a quote that.
Oh, no, I don't have a quote against that, but I was going to say, he says on the bottom of 135, every thou shalt has hitherto been directed against us. So,
let's look at that.
So I found that interesting because I feel like is he saying there that like, when he said thou shalt, is that like referencing like a command, like the 10 Commandments, is like thou shalt not kill, steal. So it kind of sounds like he's saying that it goes against humanity, but like how exactly is that? You're saying like thou shalt not kill. Why is that like? How's that going against us?
Yes, let me read that. Let's all go there, guys. 135. the last few lines. I'm going to read from the top just briefly to make sure I understand correctly. So let's read together silently on number 13. Okay. Okay, yes. Yes, he's here criticizing the whole how things should be, right? Which is what Kant is doing. So let me just maybe summarize what Kant is doing, right? Kant is saying we live in two worlds. The first world is how things are. And in this world, everything is corrupt, everybody's cheating, everybody's killing, everybody, and it's true, right? It's very bad. But then he says we also live in another world, which is a kind of ideal world where we are aware somehow of how things should be. We know we shouldn't kill. We know we shouldn't cheat. We know we shouldn't steal. How do we know? Not from this world, because everyone's doing it. So we have kind of this connection to this ideal world, right? And so that's Kant, right? So Kant is saying we need to live according to these ideals. We can't just be living in the world as it is. We should continuously tap into this how things should be in order to be truly human, right? Now Nietzsche is going to be like, yeah, why? Why can't we just live in this world? Why? You see, Kant is saying basically this world is bad. When he says here's how things should be, he's saying the way things are bad. And Nietzsche is like, no, they're not, right? This is humanity. This is us wrestling with our passions and so forth. So he doesn't like the way that Kant kind of says, this is the good world, this is the bad world. And that's what he doesn't like about it.
I kind of took it also to understand, like, for Kant, like, happiness is not, like, a necessity. So, like, and Nietzsche, like, happiness and joy should be, like,
absolutely. Kant is very Platonic. Kant is constantly over here how things should be. And Nietzsche is like, stop it. Like, life is waiting for you. Come down, right? Don't be always thinking how things should be. Enter life, live life, experience life. How things are is not necessarily bad, right? Yes, maybe there's a lot of violence and so, but not only, right? There's not only violence down here, right? And sometimes violence is how we learn this, right? Enter life and learn like that, right? So that's, I think that's his criticism, is that Kant is over there floating in the how things should be and is missing how things are and despising how things are, right? Which is very Christian of him, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, good objection though, very good. Anybody else want to respond to Nietzsche and see if you can help Nietzsche? I think you had something to say.
I was just going to say, like, he got syphilis, so he's probably delusional.
That's a low blow, Arsenas. That's a low blow. And remember, I'm asking you, the exercise is for you to figure out a way to respond to him in a way that he would understand. So I don't think, I don't think you would get very far with that. Anybody else want to try to respond and, you know, sense that there's something off with what he's saying and you want to try to say something or ask a question about it? Okay, let me anticipate on the two philosophers we're going to be studying and how they will begin to respond to Nietzsche. And I'll come back to this idea over and over again. So Levinas is the next one. Not exactly next, but actually I start with Marcel. Marcel is the next philosopher, M-A-R-C-E-L. Marcel's going to do something very interesting. He's going to say, yes, it's true, we desire for there to be a God collectively, right? We need it, we desire it, we wish it was there. And then he flips it and he says, well, what is to say that this desire is delusional? In other words, this is interesting. You don't desire something that doesn't exist, correct? Have you ever desired something that doesn't exist? Tell me, Vega. But you know planets exist, right?
Everything outside.
Okay, so but you still have a sense of, you still know it's a planet, you still think it's something beyond you.
Well, I just said planet because not a planet, but just anything outside of it.
But you desire reality outside of this, right? Reality which you know of a little bit.
I mean, outside of the Earth.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. You're desiring something real outside of Earth.
Oh, right. Okay.
In reality, you know what that is. You're desiring the same thing now outside of Earth. You see what I'm saying? Okay, Roy, you had also, no?
like being rich.
Oh yeah, but rich, you've seen rich people, right?
Yeah, but like for me.
Oh yeah. No, for sure. We desire only that which we know, in the sense that I've seen it over there with that person, and now I want it. You can't desire something you've never seen, basically, right? That's the idea. So Marcel is going to say something that why can't we trust our desire as having a truth content, as pointing us to a reality, right? Why should we think of desire as delusional? Maybe desire actually pointing you to a reality. Maybe the desire is awakened by a reality, right? I'm sitting here, right? I don't know, something's missing in my life. And all of a sudden, I see someone eating chocolate cake and I'm like, that's it. That's what's missing. Right? That's what I want. Right? So I didn't know, but my desire, all of a sudden now I desire the cake because the cake has appeared. Right? So the cake has awakened my desire. Marcel is going to make a similar argument. He's going to say all desire is always awakened by a reality. If you have a desire, there's a reality. That's in a nutshell, Marcel. Let me say it again so you can get it in your head, start thinking about it. All desire is awakened by a reality. You can't have a desire if there's no reality over there pulling you, right? So no desire, so any desire means that there is a corresponding reality. And so if we desire God, Marcel is like, then there must be a corresponding reality. So that's kind of his argument, right? So he's really working with Nietzsche. Notice how he's on the same, starts where Nietzsche is. Desire, collective desire for God. And then he flips it and he's like, he goes deeper, analyzes what is really desire. Actually, no desire without reality. Unlike Nietzsche, right? So we're going to see that. So that's going to be a really interesting way to respond. Any questions on that one? Let's see. Yes, go ahead. Oh, sorry.
Humans by nature, we always want what we cannot have. That's what usually keeps people going, because they strive to achieve what they can't have now. So, like, if you're saying, if you can't see it, you cannot have it. Let's say money, but what if someone thinks it in their head? And then they attracted that one, so they say, oh, in my head, I want this car. I know it doesn't exist, but it exists in my head.
Yes, but you've seen a car somewhere. You know cars
Let's
exist.
say that specific car. Maybe I have like a spaceship in my head. That's like the car. If it exists for me, maybe like Elon Musk, he created.
Well, yes, that's a good one. That's a good one. That's people who invent things. So are we inventing God? So that's a good rebuttal, right? So we can go on forever, right? Well, desire is collective delusion. No, desire is awakened by reality. Well, what about people who invent things? You see, this is how philosophy works. We should constantly be hearing, right, the alternative viewpoints. So people who invent things, maybe that's a different story. I'd have to think about it a little more deeply, but that's a good point to think about. And you guys can do that too. Good. Roy, you had your hand up.
Wait, did I?
You forgot? Okay, good. So that's Marcel. Now, and we'll have to go back when we do Marcel. You guys come back, Vega and Rubinov, with this objection and see if he stands right under it. Now, Livinga is going to say something also very interesting to Nietzsche. And he's going to say, well, actually, true spirituality is the ability to remain open to the world. He's going to really shift things. He's going to say, no, true spirituality is not separation from the world. True spirituality is engagement with the world. It's being sensitive to the oppression and the pain that people are going through and responding to that. That's what it means to be spiritual, right? So he really, again, goes right in the direction of Nietzsche. Says, yeah, let's get rid of those stories. Let's enter the world. In fact, the more I am engaging with the world, the more I am sensitive to the oppression of what people are going through, the more spiritual. And he's going to argue for this, that the more spiritual you become in that sense. So true believer, true faith is engagement with the world, not escape from the world. So you see how they are really trying, and we'll go into details, of course, but you can see how these philosophers are already thinking about Nietzsche, trying to respond, and they give really interesting answers, right? That will help us also reframe. And maybe we do need to get away from these stories in order to find a more authentic spirituality, right? In response to Roy, maybe it is necessary to put those stories aside, all of these consolations aside, to really attain what it really means to be spiritual, right? And maybe to be spiritual is not believing a bunch of stories. Maybe it's something else altogether. Maybe Nietzsche is stirring us steering us, Nietzsche is steering us into deeper waters of spirituality. Let me say that again, right? So just now in agreement with Nietzsche, maybe we do need to leave behind these stories, right? Maybe we do need to leave behind the comforts of these tales, right? Or the consolations of these tales. And maybe Nietzsche is pushing us into deeper waters of deeper spiritual waters, right? Children need stories, but do adults need stories, right? Shouldn't we go beyond these stories and go more deeply in the spiritual realm? So that's the question, right, that we're going to be trying to answer next few weeks. Okay, any last comments or questions? Boom, I finished right on time.
Oh yeah, I was going to say that thing about
You're ruining it. Go ahead.
the concept, people invent things, so maybe that's like a rebuttal. People could also argue, like, the concept of inventing is itself a reflection of God being an inventor. So like, we are creators and inventors in the same way as God who made us in our image.
Oh, okay.
As creator and
So God creates us, but we create God too. It's tempting.
But like the fact we create and invent is kind of like an indication we are from God, who is.
It's an imaginary cause there. Nietzsche would say, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right, I will see you guys in a week. I need your test this weekend, everybody's tests, because we are going to be starting very difficult material. Next week with Marcel, it's going to be a nightmare. So really get yourselves together.
How much?
Can you upload
Like
them?
Levinas, same nightmare. So you know how it was for Levinas. It's the same for
Can you upload the test now? Or